February 14, 1933. 4:32 a.m., Harlem's Cotton Club basement. Bumpy Johnson descended those stairs knowing exactly what waited for him in the dark. The message had been clear. Dutch Schultz wanted him dead, and 12 men with Tommy guns don't leave witnesses. But what those 12 men didn't know, what Dutch Schultz didn't know, was that Bumpy Johnson didn't walk into traps. He built them. The basement was pitch black except for one naked light bulb, swinging from a wire in the center of the room, casting shadows that moved like living things across the concrete walls. Bumpy heard them before he saw them. The sound of safeties clicking off in near-perfect unison. 1, 2, 5, 8, 12. 12 guns, 12 professional killers stepping out of the darkness, forming a circle around him. Tommy, the executioner. Malone stepped forward first, grinning like a man who'd already spent his payment. He was Dutch Schultz's best, a stone-cold killer who'd murdered 17 men and never missed a contract. Behind him stood 11 more, Irish, Italian, Jewish, an all-star team of death assembled specifically to end Bumpy Johnson's reign over Harlem's numbers racket. That all Dutch sent. Bumpy's voice was calm, almost conversational, as if he were asking about the weather instead of staring down 12 barrels pointed at his chest. Tommy's grin widened. He said you were smart. Guess he was wrong. His finger moved toward the trigger. That's when Bumpy smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a desperate smile. The smile of a man who knew something nobody else in that basement knew. Pull that trigger, Tommy, see what happens. To understand what happened next, you have to understand who Bumpy Johnson was. And more importantly, what he'd been doing for the 3 weeks leading up to this moment. Ellsworth Raymond Bumpy Johnson wasn't the biggest gangster in Harlem. He wasn't the richest. He didn't have the most men or the most guns. What Bumpy had was something far more dangerous. He was always 3 moves ahead. While other gangsters built empires on fear and violence, Bumpy built his on intelligence, strategy, and an almost supernatural ability to see around corners. He'd grown up in South Carolina, moved to Harlem at 15, and by 25 controlled the most profitable numbers operation north of 110th Street. Not through warfare, not through brutality, through chess moves that left his enemies confused and defeated before they even realized the game had started. By 1933, Bumpy's operation was clearing $50,000 a week, an absolute fortune during the Great Depression. His network of runners, collectors, and policy banks employed over 300 people, providing hope in a neighborhood where hope was rarer than honest cops. You could bet a nickel and win $50. For people living on the edge of starvation, that nickel represented a dream, and Bumpy protected that dream like it was sacred, because to him, it was. Harlem wasn't just his territory, it was his home. These weren't just his customers, they were his people. Dutch Schultz saw something different when he looked at Harlem. He saw money he wasn't collecting, a territory he didn't control, and Bumpy Johnson as an obstacle that needed removing. Arthur Flegenheimer, the man the world knew as Dutch Schultz, was everything Bumpy wasn't. Where Bumpy was strategic, Dutch was impulsive. Where Bumpy built loyalty, Dutch ruled through terror. Where Bumpy protected his community, Dutch exploited it. The Bronx beer baron had built his empire on bootlegging and extortion, leaving bodies and burned businesses in his wake. By early 1933, Prohibition was done, and Dutch needed new revenue streams. He wanted Harlem's numbers racket, and he wanted it all. The war started small. Dutch sent collectors to Bumpy's territory, offering better terms to his runners. When that didn't work, he tried intimidation, then violence. 2 of Bumpy's policy bank managers disappeared. A runner named James got beaten so badly he spent 3 months in Harlem Hospital. Dutch's message was clear: surrender or die. Most gangsters would have responded with firepower. Bumpy responded with patience. For 3 weeks, while Dutch escalated his campaign, Bumpy seemed to do nothing. His people whispered nervously. Some wondered if he'd lost his nerve. A few even switched sides, believing Dutch's victory was inevitable. But Bumpy wasn't doing nothing. He was positioning pieces on a chessboard Dutch Schultz couldn't even see. First, Bumpy sent a young hustler named Jerome to work as a parking attendant outside the Cotton Club. Jerome's job was simple: watch and remember. He noted which cars arrived when, who met with whom, which bartenders Dutch's men trusted, which basement entrance they used for private business. For 3 weeks, Jerome watched and reported everything back to Bumpy. Second, Bumpy visited every single one of his policy bank managers personally, all 23 of them. He didn't ask for loyalty. He didn't threaten. He simply explained what was coming and gave each of them a choice: stay or leave, no hard feelings either way. 21 stayed. Those 2 who left, Bumpy gave them severance pay and safe passage out of Harlem. Even in war, he kept his code. Third, and this is the move that mattered most, Bumpy visited a master electrician in the Bronx named Samuel Rothstein. Sam owed Bumpy a favor from 1929 when Bumpy had helped Sam's brother avoid a murder charge. Bumpy explained what he needed, and Sam, a meticulous craftsman who understood both electricity and discretion, went to work. On February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, Dutch Schultz made his final move. He sent word through Tommy Malone, "Will come to the Cotton Club basement at 4:30 a.m., alone, and we'll talk terms." The implication was clear. This was an execution dressed up as a negotiation. Show up and die, or hide and be hunted down like a dog. Bumpy sent word back immediately: "I'll be there." His closest advisors thought he'd lost his mind. His girlfriend, Mamie, begged him not to go. Old-timer Jocko, who'd known Bumpy since he was 16, actually cried. But Bumpy just smiled that same calm smile and said 5 words that nobody understood at the time: "The lights go out tonight." At 4:15 a.m., Samuel Rothstein entered the Cotton Club through the service entrance, carrying a toolbox. The night manager, who'd been paid $200 by Dutch's people to look the other way during the meeting, barely glanced at him. Sam went straight to the basement electrical panel, the one that controlled every light below ground level. He worked for exactly 8 minutes. When he left, everything looked normal. The lights were on, the switches worked, but Sam had installed something special: a relay timer connected to a master cutoff, hidden inside the panel's metal housing where nobody would ever look. At precisely 4:35 a.m., 3 minutes after Bumpy was scheduled to arrive, every light in that basement would cut out, and they wouldn't come back on. Not with the switches, not with anything, not unless you knew exactly which relay to reset, and where Sam had hidden it. At 4:32 a.m., Bumpy Johnson walked down those basement stairs into what Dutch Schultz believed was an execution chamber. Tommy Malone and his 11 killers stepped out of the shadows, guns drawn, forming that circle of death. Tommy made his tough guy speech. Bumpy made his calm reply. And then he smiled. "Pull that trigger, Tommy. See what happens." Tommy's finger tightened. His face showed confusion for just a second. Why wasn't this man afraid? But his training took over. He pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. Tommy's grin vanished. He pulled again. Click, click, click. All around the circle, 12 professional killers were pulling triggers on 12 different guns, and 12 different guns were refusing to fire. The clicking sound filled the basement like a swarm of mechanical insects, urgent and desperate and utterly impotent. That's when the lights went out. Complete darkness. The kind of darkness that swallows sound and sense and reason. For exactly 2 seconds, there was silence, except for panicked breathing and the continued clicking of useless triggers. Then Tommy's voice, no longer cocky, edged with the first hint of fear. "What did you do? What the hell did you—" His voice cut off, not because he stopped talking, because something hit him hard. The sound of body hitting concrete echoed through the darkness. Then another sound, and another. 12 professional killers, trapped in pitch-black darkness, started shooting wildly. Muzzle flashes lit up the basement in strobe light bursts. Brief snapshots of chaos. Men firing at shadows, bullets ricocheting off concrete walls, screams, the smell of gunpowder thick enough to choke on. And through it all, moving like smoke, like a ghost, like something that lived in darkness and knew its every corner, Bumpy Johnson worked. He'd spent 3 weeks memorizing this basement, every pipe, every support beam, every corner and alcove. He knew it better than these men knew their own homes, and he'd come prepared, not with a gun, but with something far more personal, a straight razor. The same razor his mentor Stephanie St. Clair had given him when he was 17, telling him, guns are loud, razors are precise, and sometimes precision matters more than power. In the darkness, Bumpy moved between the panicking hitmen like a conductor leading a violent symphony. He didn't kill them, that wasn't the point, and it wasn't his code, but he marked them. One by one, he found them in the chaos, and one by one, he left his signature, a cut across the left cheek, precise and deliberate, deep enough to scar for life, but not deep enough to kill. Tommy Malone, still trying to bark orders in the darkness, felt the presence behind him, then burning pain across his face. His scream joined the others. The gunfire continued for maybe 90 seconds, though to the men trapped in that basement it must have felt like hours. Bullets punched through walls, shattered pipes, sparked off metal. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Magazines empty, cylinders spent, darkness and silence again, except for labored breathing, whimpering, and the steady drip, drip, drip of water from a ruptured pipe. Bumpy stood in the center of the room, exactly where he'd been standing when the lights went out, his breathing calm and controlled. He could hear all 12 men scattered around the basement, some lying on the ground, some crouched against walls, all terrified and disoriented and marked. He'd touched each of them, let each of them know that he could have killed them, and chose not to. His voice cut through the darkness, calm as Sunday morning. You can tell Dutch I'm not interested in his terms. You can also tell him that if he sends anyone else to Harlem, they won't walk out. I gave you boys a pass tonight because you're just following orders. But the pass is one time only. You come back, you don't leave. Silence. Then Tommy's voice, shaky now, all bravado gone. The door's locked. How do we get out? You wait, Bumpy said simply. At 6 a.m., someone will unlock it. Until then, you sit in the dark and think about what happens when you underestimate people. Think about what happens when you come to someone's home with violence. Think about the fact that I could have killed all 12 of you, and I let you live. Remember that kindness, Tommy, because you won't get another one. Bumpy walked to the staircase. He knew exactly where it was, exactly how many steps, and ascended into the upper level of the Cotton Club. Behind him, in the basement, 12 of the most dangerous men in New York sat in complete darkness, bleeding and terrified and forever marked. At 6 a.m. sharp, the Cotton Club day manager arrived and found the basement door locked from the outside. When he opened it and turned on the lights, the main floor switches still worked fine. He discovered 12 men, each with an identical scar across their left cheek, sitting in a basement shot to pieces by their own gunfire. Not one of them said a word about what happened. Not one of them ever took another contract in Harlem. By noon that same day, Dutch Schultz received visits from 8 of his senior captains. They'd all heard the story. They'd all seen Tommy Malone's face. And they all delivered the same message: leave Harlem alone. Whatever war you're thinking of starting, it's not worth it. Bumpy Johnson isn't a man you can kill with guns and numbers. He's something different. Dutch, who'd built his reputation on never backing down, did something he'd never done before. He backed down. He sent word through intermediaries that his interest in Harlem's numbers racket had been satisfied by other opportunities, Translation: I'm out. The story spread through Harlem like wildfire. The details got embellished, as all legends do. Some versions said Bumpy killed all 12 men. Some said he fought them in the dark with his bare hands. Some said he was bulletproof, that the guns didn't fire because God himself protected Harlem's guardian. But the people who knew Bumpy understood the truth was somehow more impressive than the myth. He didn't need bulletproof skin or supernatural powers. He had something better: intelligence, preparation, and an understanding of human psychology that turned 12 killers into 12 messengers. The Cotton Club basement became legendary. For years afterward, people would visit it like a shrine, running their fingers along the bullet holes in the walls, imagining what that night must have been like. The club's owner eventually renovated, plastering over the damage. But old-timers would tell newcomers, "You're standing where Bumpy Johnson defeated an army without firing a single shot." But here's what matters more than the legend. Here's what that night taught everyone who heard the story. Real power isn't about violence. It's about strategy. It's about being 10 steps ahead while your enemy is still planning. Step 1. It's about understanding that sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't a Tommy gun or a knife. It's knowledge, preparation, and the willingness to use darkness itself as an ally. Bumpy Johnson never had the most soldiers, never had the biggest guns, never ruled through fear. He ruled through respect, earned by moments exactly like this. Moments when intelligence triumphed over firepower, when strategy defeated numbers, when one man with a plan proved more dangerous than an army with weapons. Dutch Schultz never touched Harlem again. Those 12 hitmen never worked another contract in their lives. Not because they were physically unable, but because everyone who saw those scars understood. They'd been defeated by someone operating on a different level entirely. And Bumpy, he continued running Harlem's numbers racket for another 30 years, protecting his community, providing hope through nickel bets that sometimes paid $50, and building a legacy, not on bodies, but on brilliance. February 14, 1933. The night 12 professional killers walked into a basement. The night they learned what darkness really means. The night the lights went out and never came back on for them. So here's the question worth asking. What would you have done if you were Bumpy, facing 12 guns, knowing you were alone? What strategy would you have deployed? Would you have tried to fight your way out? Would you have negotiated? Or would you have done what Bumpy did? Spent 3 weeks turning your enemy's trap into their nightmare. That's the lesson of the Cotton Club basement. Power isn't given. Respect isn't inherited. Victories aren't won in the moment of confrontation. They're won in the weeks of preparation nobody sees. Bumpy Johnson understood that. Dutch Schultz didn't. And that difference changed Harlem history. If this story made you think about power differently, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me what's the smartest strategic move you've ever witnessed in real life. And if you want more stories about the legends who shaped Harlem, who ruled through intelligence instead of violence, who proved that brains beat bullets every single time, there's a whole playlist waiting for you. Click that notification bell, because these stories don't just entertain, they teach. And the lessons from February 14, 1933 are just as relevant today as they were 90 years ago. Remember, when the lights go out, the prepared thrive. Everyone else just panics in the dark.